Hello and good morning. My name is Erin Myers, student of art history at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond. It is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Michael Franses. Franses's interest in carpet and historical textiles began in the 1960s when he worked alongside his father in the family business S. Franses Limited. In 1975, he co-founded the International Conference on Oriental Carpets and Hali, the International Journal of Oriental Carpets and Textiles. Both the conference and the journal continue to be important outlets for the production and dissemination of knowledge in the field. From 1971 until 2007, he owned the Textile Gallery in London, a resource for scholars and collectors. Last year, the Textile Museum in Washington, D.C. awarded Michael Franses with one of the highest honors in the field, the George Hewitt Myers Award. He is currently working on publications on the early history of Chinese woven silk and the history of carpets before 1400. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Franses this morning as he shares with us his authority on early Anatolian animal carpets. Please welcome Michael Franses.
Thank you, Sheila, and thank you, Jonathan, for inviting me to present a paper. And thank you, Melissa, for organizing a wonderful event. The quality of papers have been outstanding, and in fact, I think they're a very hard act to follow. I must thank Aisha Al-Qatar for her wonderful team here at the MIQ, for all their help in making this a wonderful symposium, and also in particular for Kostas and Mona for the help in the conservation department. And also a special thanks to Oliver Watson, who after 6 years away invited me back to Qatar, and also to meet her Excellency Sheikha Maasa, who've been incredibly welcoming into this organization. All the people I've met in Qatar Museum Authority have been most generous with their time and very thoughtful. So if any of you young people here are ever thinking of a job in the museums in Qatar, I can't say you'll find nicer people to work with or a more interesting career. And it's an honor and privilege to work with these people. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for me being here today. Before I commence, I know you've all turned your mobile phones off, but I'm wondering if I could ask one other thing. Could you turn your flashes off of your camera? That would be very kind. And I don't mind you taking photographs of my pictures, but the thing is that I only have permission to publish some of them, and many of them are in private collections. So what I ask is that you don't publish them without permission. So that's all I'm saying. The other thing is there'll be a number in the top left-hand corner of the screen, and if you note the number down, I'm very happy to send you material after about them and tell you which can be published and which can't. So, the study of Oriental carpets, their patterns, developments, and history have never commanded the respect given to other areas of art history. Apart from a few eminent scholars, such as Wilhelm von Bode, Friedrich Zare, Ernst Kullel, Kurt Erdmann, Richard Hessinghausen, the study of carpets, the origins and developments of their patterns, has clearly remained a somewhat taboo subject for art historians. Perhaps this is because they were considered just furnishing items and not worthy of serious study. Perhaps also it's because so little is known about where any of them were made, or indeed by whom. Yet it's clear that textile arts in general, and carpets in particular, have been one of the prime mediums of artistic expression across much of Asia for the last 3,000 years. Today I will try to put into context one of the most beautiful works of Islamic art in the collection of the Museum of Islamic Art here in Qatar, the Qatar Anatolian animal carpet. Am I going the right way? Here we go. Standing before this extraordinary carpet, one is immediately fascinated by the abstract animals that fill the center. The patterns embrace aspects of Islamic art, as well as iconography derived from earlier traditions, and show how the peoples of the Islamic world adopted and adapted symbols. We see creatures within creatures, perhaps symbolizing birth, or mythological beasts placed here to carry the soul to the afterlife. What strange creatures they are, probably ancient totemic symbols that can be traced back to some of the oldest civilizations of the ancient Near East. The carpet tells a story of which there have been many interpretations, but I will not address this point today. Instead, I will attempt to shed light on its rarity and significance by examining the surviving group of animal carpets. The Qatar animal carpet was acquired in Kathmandu, Nepal in the late 1980s from refugees fleeing from Tibet. Forgive me. Also found in Nepal were 4 other Anatolian rugs, now in Western collections, with very similar designs. The 5 Anatolian animal carpets with animal patterns, as you see here. The Qatar example on the left is the most spectacular by virtue of its size. These all will be discussed in greater detail later. They were all reportedly preserved in Himalayan monasteries for the past 700 years, and they've been dated using multiple carbon-14 tests. The physical evidence to support that they came from the monasteries is that the surfaces of many of them were quite black, coated with yak butter that had been penetrated deep into the base of the pile. Yak butter candles are still used today to illuminate Himalayan monasteries. In this detail, we can see the primary border that is specific to 4 or 5 examples of this Turkish carpet group. There's an interlacing twist in the pseudo-Kufic uprights, which one part is portrayed behind the other. Flanking the central motif is a string of 3 diamond shapes with an amulet below, rather like jewelry. These particular features are unique to this border pattern. This specific design can be seen in 2 other groups of carpets, both probably made contemporaneously and woven some 6,000 kilometers away to the east of Anatolia in Mongolia, and I'll be presenting those carpets as well later. In 1959, Richard Ettinghausen published New Light on Early Animal Carpets in the Festschrift für Ernstkunde, and I've used this key article as a basis for my talk today. In the first part of his paper, Ettinghausen discussed 2 small fragments of Islamic pile carpets that may have derived from woven silk patterns. We'll examine these as well. He presented a number of European paintings from the 13th, 14th century that depict animal carpets, and several Islamic paintings that we will look at. In the second part of Ettinghausen's paper, he looked at the De Mott Shana May in the Freer Gallery of Art, which depicts a rug with animals similar to the one seen in the rug in a Sienese painting of about 1423 in the National Gallery, London. Both these paintings, not these 2 here, this is the Freer painting, but this and the Sienese painting relate very, very closely to the Qatar animal carpet. That's, you'll see, is a drawing that was done by Kurt Erdmann. The research done by Ettinghausen. The research of Kurt Erdmann and John Mills has since brought to light more than 60 13th to 15th century European paintings that depict animal carpets, but only the one Sienese painting relates to carpets of this particular group. Further rugs in other Western paintings might show us a range of the characters animals seen on knotted carpets, some of which appear to be Oriental, and others may have been made in Western Europe. Ettinghausen suggests that the rug depicted in the Freer painting might be Caucasian, But when he wrote this paper, the Anatolian rugs from Himalayan monasteries were unknown in the West. Ettinghausen began his fascinating story on early animal carpets with these small fragments of the Sasanian period. And I'd like to start instead of starting with this, I'd like to start much earlier. In fact, I'd like to start with the beginnings of carpet making some 3,000 years ago, and then go up to about 600 years ago, so we can shed far more light on early animal carpets. So I'm going to take you for a very fast ride through early animal carpets, so you're aware of the subject. Here we go. Gone the wrong way? No, that's the right way. That's the right way. I apologize. Here you are, in the beginning. It's often been written that pile carpets may have developed from the use of animal skins to keep people warm in the winter months. The origins of weaving began with simple tabby techniques. It's not too great a step to insert loops to form a pile. Amongst the oldest examples are looped piles from Ur in Mesopotamia from around 2600 BC, and linen pile rugs from Egypt and Sudan from 2100 BC to about 1300 BC. Fragments of wool pile carpets are known from the 9th century BC from Armenia, but the fragments are too small to determine the patterns. And the earliest surviving carpet is a fragment that's made with the earliest fragment with symmetric knots is a fragment. This was found in Korla, south of Urumqi, in China, and the pattern represents tiger stripes. I don't know whether you can see strong enough to see where I've put at the bottom where these things are, so I won't tell you that. You'll have to read it. It's also possible that the Korla rug was made further north, in lands more suitable to sheep rearing, possibly in the Altai region of Xinjiang. I think, do I need to point it? I think you can probably see it. Korla, you can see, is at the bottom there, here, somewhere down there. Where's the pointer? Is this the pointer? There. Korla's there, and I actually think probably they were made slightly further north. But anyway, that's another point. Less well known is probably what is the oldest surviving complete knotted pile carpet, which was reportedly found in the 1930s in a desert region north of Shiraz. It was acquired in a local bazaar, and it went into an Iranian private collection. And this was found in Shiraz. And this is, the pattern depicts deer or ibex facing forwards and backwards, very much in the Achaemenid manner. And while the pile is mostly knotted with beige, natural beige and brown wool, there are tiny details in red and blue. The layout of the animals and the unusual format of the piece suggest that this might have well been some sort of horse cover. Perhaps a clue can be seen on this horse cover of the Scythian Medias, as depicted in this 2,750-year-old clay rhyton found in Azerbaijan. Ibexes can be seen in Iranian Luristan-style bronze figures dating from 3000 BC to 650 BC, and on belts right across Asia through Scythian cultures and northwest China, and the Ordos, in things from the Ordos Mountains. The symbols depicted on early rugs were employed to protect the owner, to ward off evil spirits, and to carry the soul into the next world. They were mirrors of the heavens. Probably the most famous animal carpet is the Pasiric carpet, and most of you know this, and it was found in 1940s by Rudenko in the Altai region of southern Siberia. It's carbon dated to 383 to 200 BC, and measures 183 centimeters by 200 centimeters. The construction of the carpet is quite sophisticated due to its fine quality and having about 3,600 symmetrical knots to the square decimeter. The primary border has an anti-clockwise procession of horsemen against a red background, each with a saddle rug, and the guard border repeats the pattern of the central field. While the cross motif is set against a green background, the inner primary border has a clockwise procession of feeding deer. and the inner guard border repeats the winged animals in yellow compartments on a red background. Although knotted pile carpets are made on simple looms, considerable skill is required to make them. Each of the warp threads needs to be spun to exactly the same density and then tied to the loom with identical tension. If there are any inconsistencies in the tension, the rug will not lie flat when it's removed from the loom. The same problem occurs if the weft threads that are pulled across are not also pulled at equal tension. So it's incredibly skilled to make these carpets. Anyway, similar cruciform patterns that you saw in the Pasiric carpet can also be seen on alabaster pavement slabs from the palace of Ashurnapur at Nineveh. And in the cold winters, however, woolen pile carpets must have covered mosaics with the same pattern and may well have copied the stone carpets or vice versa. Forgive me, I'm going to... Thank you. At the same time of Alexander, the kingdoms of Bactria, Margia, and Sogdia lay to the east. We can see at the center Parthia and the Persian Empire with Margia and Bactria over onto the right-hand side. Parthia and Media, we will show that early animal carpet patterns have been influenced by all these cultures. And the similarities we see are hardly surprising as the empire of Alexander the Great spread from Macedonia to Afghanistan. This rug was acquired in Nepal in the 1960s, and it was reportedly found in the Taklamakan Desert some 80 years ago. It has pretend fringes to simulate pile around the edges. These are sort of pretend fringes. And it has a typical, reciprocal trefoil border. But the most fascinating thing about this carpet is that the field pattern is very, very similar indeed to mosaics. And that's a mosaic floor you can see from Antioch. And I was recently going through Kurt Erdmann's archive in Berlin and saw some of his notes at the very beginning of his career in the 1920s. And he made lots of notations about the origins of carpet designs coming from mosaic floors. And I think the evidence is now coming to light in many instances that actually prove this. This is just one I'm showing you today, but there's a number of instances. Some patterns may also have been derived from wall reliefs. In the palace of Darius at Persepolis, we can see many depicting animals, and here's a lion's face in profile. Undoubtedly, Persepolis reliefs influenced by earlier wall decorations from ancient Babylon. So to return to Bactrian carpets, some 500 years later, 500 years later than that relief, we find examples such as this lion carpet, which is in the museum in Urumqi, which was excavated from a tomb in Yingpan. In many of this group, we see the feet of the animals cross the border. I don't know if, is it out of focus or? Is the focus out? Sorry, no, the picture isn't out of focus. Very odd. Okay, fine. In many of the group, the animals cross the border, and the border can be related to acanthus leaves on Greek vases. Now we're in focus. On this example, in the private collection in Chicago, one of the long borders has been moved out, pushed out the way there to accommodate the back of the lion. And again, you see these false fringes around the edge. That happened by itself. That wasn't me. I don't know what's happening here. It's got a life of its own, this machine. All right, here we go. All right. The positions of the paws, the face and the paws, are reminiscent of the Persepolis relief, as you see. Here is a striding tiger, and its red tongue is hanging out. Oh, that is not me either. I don't know what's going on here. Sorry, let's go on. It's just doing it by itself. I'm staying away. All right, let's hope it doesn't move. Okay, you'll see the tongue of the... Oh, no, I don't know what's going wrong with this. Oh, there's something on here I'm pushing. I apologize. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I thought I was pushing the thing. I'm sorry. Okay, fine. We'll go on here. Sorry. It's me doing it. I am terribly sorry. Anyway, here's a standing tiger. The red tongue is hanging out, and you'll see that again the paws cross the border. And this is in the Museum of Islamic Art here in Doha. And the animal's stance is reminiscent of this frieze in Babylon. Here's another animal carpet, and you'll see there's a very strange sort of human face appearing in it, and this is another at the back end of a tiger, of a lion, sorry, forgive me. And here's another lion rug, and you can see the feline face here, and again the ear crosses the border, and it's typical of this group of Bactrian carpets. Here we go. On this rug, which is slightly later in date, the animals are more schematically drawn, as well as 3 trees. And there's 3 trees behind the animals. And the Hellenistic acanthus flowers in the borders are quite clear. Similar compositions, albeit more naturalistic, can be observed on Greek Attic vases. This rug depicts kneeling deer, and 2 of the borders have reciprocal patterns seen on mosaics. It's also found in a cave. It was also found in a cave in northern Afghanistan, this piece. 3 rugs have been found from the region that portray human figures. I'm not going to go over those in detail today, but because this is about animal carpets. But the patterns of these are quite extraordinary because they combine many cultures. The upper scene depicts a seated deity with a turquoise background, and the figure is cross-legged, wearing very few clothes. Here we go on. Does it go on? No. It's not moving. Here we go. Yes, it is. We should go. No, it's not. Here we go. All right. Please move. Here we go. You'll see in the lower scene are 2 other figures, probably a man and a woman, possibly a king and queen, and their faces are drawn very much in the Iranian manner. And the red main border, at the narrow border, is very much again in the Greco-Bactrian style. We know 2 early animal carpets that can be directly attributed to China by virtue of their technique and materials, and 12 figurative rugs from Xinjiang from this same period, although we don't have time to deal with those today. Very little has survived that can be attributed to Persia, so it must surely have been in the center of rug production. We only know 1 surviving carpet from the 5th century. And I've already shown you the earliest surviving carpet, much earlier from Persia. And this carpet here has these kilim ends with a lion procession. This is now in Qatar, this carpet. And in the bottom right-hand corner, and it's very, very hard to read, even I couldn't read it when I saw it originally, is this standing 4-legged animal sitting in the corner here. But I don't know, is this the button there? It actually lives there, this little detail. All right, so on we go. Well, other developments, on the other hand, there are enough examples to suggest that abstract schematic creatures tend often to represent later developments in the evolution of symbols. An excellent lesson in abstraction was given to us by Picasso in 1945, and we can also see this abstraction in a complete Anatolian rug from the 17th century when we compare it to a Bactrian rug. Similar rugs may have served as its antecedent. Let me just go on to this. Numerous knotted pile carpets dating from the 6th to the 15th century have been found in the waste dumps of Old Cairo in Fostat. And although many of these are too small to clearly determine the field patterns, in the 1920s, a French archaeologist found an almost complete rug from Fustat in Cairo, and it remained until the 1980s in a private collection in Paris. I did this painting above that shows it much more clearly. And again, we see it's another of these lion rugs, but very, very schematically drawn. The pattern is better seen in the watercolor rendering, and numerous imaginative ideas were proposed as to its pattern. Naturalism may well have been abstracted in some animal rugs, but the very abstract patterns we're often talking about as archaic, but perhaps the design has been repeated so often without really being understood that the abstraction of the pattern is simply evolution. Unknown to Western scholars of carpets and Islamic arts was the Fustat lion rug and the numerous finds from Bactria and the Taklamakan desert and the examples that later came up in Tibet and Nepal. So, nor were they aware of the discoveries of Iran or Afghanistan that I presented. But this is where Ettinghausen started. So, also found at Fustat, although probably from Iraq, is this naturalistic fragment. Ettinghausen in 1959 stated that owing to the scarcity of preserved examples, the genesis of animal carpets is still rather hypothetical. The few carpet fragments known from this period in the Islamic world have geometric abstract designs, and this tiny inscribed fragment from the 8th century is quite naturalistic, and it represents the back of a bird. Such carpets may well have derived from woven silks. For this example of 7th century Chinese samit from Dulan type, probably made for the Persian market. It was originally dark red, and surviving silks with rows of standing birds are still quite rare. To support the theory of textile-derived designs, Ettinghausen showed two pile carpets, one from the Victoria and Albert Museum, London, and here I show another Dulan silk on the left-hand side with birds in roundels. They're quite frequent, those silks. And this example here, which was in a private collection in Washington. The patterns of rows of roundels are similar to those used extensively on Sasanian and Byzantine woven silks, as well as on Chinese examples from Sui to the Sung periods from 581 to 1279. And according to Louise Bellinger, these carpets were made, this carpet here, you see, was made in a Senna loop technique, which can be seen in a carpet found in Jura Europus before 256 AD. Also, fragments have been found in Negev and in Egypt. In the next part of the talk, I will briefly review animal carpets in paintings, alongside some related surviving examples, comparing it to the Qatar Anatolian animal carpet. In 1978, John Mills listed 60 European paintings depicting animal carpets, which he sorted into 7 groups based on the field designs. In the majority of these, the creatures are placed in octagons. Abstraction in the late 14th century animal carpets can best be seen in this carpet in Istanbul. The pattern is derived from Chinese Mongol silks, possibly made for export to Egypt. Louise Mackey pointed out, in the mid-14th century, silks depict a more naturalistic version of the pattern, while the carpet design is more abstracted. You can see a silk up there. There's a number of those silks. That one's in the Hermitage. There's ones in the Metropolitan and other places. These 2 damask silks are both in the Hermitage, the 2 I'm showing you. And Maria Meleshikova informs us that they were, along with a 3rd example in the museum, were discovered in burials near Al-Azam in Upper Egypt in 1897 to 98 by the Bok expedition. Further examples acquired at the same time are preserved in London, Berlin, and New York, Brussels, and other places. The lower example has the Islamic inscription, "Glory to the Lord of the Sultan, the triumphant king." The name Nazur Dunya wa Ba Din Muhammad Kalwun, the Sultan of Egypt, who ruled Egypt from 1294 to 1340. And the upper silk has a double shoe character, each inside the flower, invoking longevity, the perfect symbol for an imperial gift. Identical minor borders to the Istanbul carpet that we saw earlier can be seen on the Marby Carpet, the famous Marby Carpet that found in a church in Stockholm. And again, we see this design is probably derived from silk roundels. You will see two birds and a tree above. And in fact, the tree above you can trace back to much earlier patterns. You can trace these back to ancient Babylonian designs. What I've done is I've shown you a detail of the back of the Marby rug. The colours are much stronger on the back. And the minor borders, other side of the main border, is a very particular version of the S pattern. And you're going to see this later on the Doha animal carpet. So there it goes, and you'll see the same border. There's a detail of the border of the Qatar animal carpet with the same S border. All right. Another famous animal carpet is the Vacca flower carpet in Istanbul. And in each octagon are two large creatures facing each other. They are marked by this C motif you see, which is well known to Turkoman carpet enthusiasts. In fact, that design actually becomes a gul in later Turkoman carpets. And above the two animals, again, is this great bird that we can see on cylinder seals from much earlier times. And below the animals, you see comb animals, which we can find so often in very ancient pottery. So carpet designs come from very, very ancient patterns, but I'm not going to deal with that point here. Anyway, this curled leaf pattern is certainly derived from abstract animal forms. We know 8 paintings that depict rugs and textiles with single birds and other related creatures, most of which appear in octagons. The turned-up corner suggests that it is a material on the floor rather than a carpet here. And the long fringe on this example suggests it's more likely to be a carpet than it's a textile, and it's these details. In this painting, the floor tiles are clearly different to the fringe rug. You see where the floor tiles end. Is this the pointer here? This is the pointer here. The floor tiles end, and then you get the fringe of the rug, and we can see that's clearly a rug with creatures in hexagons. And each of these, the animal is very highly abstracted, particularly in this diamond lattice. And the bird within the octagon, you can see the rows of pile clearly distinguished. I'm going to go on just to show you a few of this in another example here. And you'll see again the rows of pile here. And we know 14 paintings that depict rugs with textiles with animals in specifically. I'm just going to show you a very few here because I want you to look at the animals, because I want you to get used to the sort of animals you get in early animal carpets. It's actually quite important. Now this carpet, in fact, there's a possibility it might be Spanish. This is a Spanish carpet I've put in the middle from the Victorian Albert Museum. It's the only one that has animals like this, these rampant lions. It's a little fragment in the Victorian Albert Museum. And this Giovanni di Paolo again depicts more semi-realistic animals in the octagons. And now in the Fra Angelica in San Marco in Florence, you'll see it has different pairs of animals and creatures in each square. And that tour of several Italian paintings leads me back to the Marriage of Virgin in the National Gallery, London. This is the key painting. But I think you needed a history of animal carpets first. Just a brief history I gave you. I didn't show you the whole 95 pieces in my archive. But anyway, we're going to look at this animal. And in fact, these little 4 legs here, we're going to look in specific detail. These little legs here and those ones that appear here. Because that part, although the figure is covering it, is very, very important for the Doha animal carpet. We're going to see in a moment. On we go. All right. So now we're getting back to the Shahnameh painting that's in the Friar. I think it's about 1330, I think, this painting. if I'm right. And we've got Doris Bryan's reconstruction that she did for Ettinghausen. And you can start to see the details of the animals, the details of the legs, and particularly these borders. This border with this, here you see, with this trident in the middle, and these minor borders, because every one of these minor borders we're going to see in a moment, right, which is quite fascinating. All right, so the first of these animal carpets that were discovered was found by a gentleman called Fred Kagan in the 1990s, and it went to the Metropolitan Museum, and that was sadly only 11 years just after Ettinghausen had passed away. The rug depicts 4 animals, each with smaller animals inside the animals here. When you compare that to the de Motte Shahnameh, these appear to be much more stylized than the animals. But again, and you don't have the lifted front leg that you see here. And again, you'll see that the border is very different to the others you're going to see in a moment. We go on here, we're going back to the Doha, and this was the second major discovery. And you'll start to see that you'll see those that, oh, we lost it. It's gone. We go back. Nope. Back. Nope. Here we go. Stay there. Nope. We lost it. Anyway, so forgive me. All right. So anyway, you'll start to see all these borders appear exactly the same as in the de Motte Shahnameh. This is the second of the, or third of the animal rugs discovered in a private collection in Geneva. And again, you see the borders match exactly as they should to the de Motte Shahnameh. And this is the next one that's been discovered. And here you see, in fact, the raised leg that we were looking at in both the painting in the National Gallery and in the de Motte Shahnameh. And in fact, very interestingly, these corner designs actually repeat in the corner designs here. But I want you to also look at this border here, because you're going to see that appear later. It's quite similar. It's a more stylized version of this pattern, but you're going to see this pattern appear later, a long way away. Very, 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 very fascinating. Let's go forward. If we're going forward, nope, it's the wrong way. Forgive me. It's downwards. It's the down button. Here we go. And these are the last of 2 small fragments that were sold recently in London that also belong to the group. So now we're going into Mongolia, and in the Mongolian rug here, we see exactly the same border. We see the same trident, this same thing between on this rug discovered in Mongolia. And this rug is very peculiar because it not only has wool in the pile, it has feathers, which is quite peculiar, and it was found also in Nepal. Then there's these group of 21 Mongolian rugs from the Yuan period that are exhibited on the 17th of July every year at the on the Yamaboko floats in the Gion Festival in Kyoto. The festival has taken place every year since 669 AD, and it's funded by local merchant guilds, each which has a storeroom of treasures bought out solely for this event. These rugs were erroneously attributed to the 19th century, as this is when they were first recorded in the guild lists, as no expert on carpets had actually seen them. A few years ago, they were reassessed as being from the Mongol period, and one has recently been carbon dated 1293 to 1447. 3 of these Mongol rugs have identical borders to the Qatar rugs. I haven't shown you one. Yes, here you see this border here is the same as the main border we were looking at. But interestingly, on the rugs from Kyoto, the outer border, you'll see just here and just here, is the same border as the inner border that surrounds the octagon on the Qatar animal rug. I just want to show you a few other pieces very quickly, and that is the fact a specific group of Turkish animal carpets discussed here were not the only group of Turkish rugs found in Nepal. This Seljuk carpet was found in Lhasa, and it shows that Anatolian carpets found their way all along the Silk Road, and so were these early carpets, and you'll see this got a pseudo-Kufic border here. You can just see the remnants of it. This was also found in Lhasa. And this famous faces rug was always been a curiosity. It's in fact, technically it relates to Kurdish carpets. It has offset knotting, and it's always fascinated people. It's again carbon dated. Most of these pieces we've had carbon dated, so you can see we're looking at 1042 to 1218. Very, very strange early animal carpet, but unique, the only example we know. And again, this another early carpet fragment. Again, you can see the early animals in the border here, these strange creatures, with these four-legged creatures here in the border. And this here is part of a very large animal, like you see in the faces rug a moment ago. So Ettinghausen and Erdmann both wrote that the comprehension of design history of early carpets is severely hampered by the fact that so few survive. And those that do form just a tiny fraction of the ones originally created. However, far more that than they could have imagined have come to light. The study of rugs in such circumstances has been likened to trying to comprehend a giant jigsaw puzzle, once composed of hundreds of thousands of pieces, where you only have a few dozen of them left in the box. A further 22 paintings that depict animal carpets have been added since to the 63 cited by Erdmann and Mills, and I feel sure others will be added to that. And I have great pleasure in scouring through churches of Italy, taking photographs of these paintings, examining their attributions, and expanding my files. The facility of our conservation studio in London has allowed me the opportunity to study and examine a number of the unknown and unpublished very early carpets, 14 of which I presented to you today for the very first time, and hopefully we'll be able to exhibit these in Doha in 2015. I could have devoted this paper to a much narrower topic, such as the study of the pseudo-Kufic border types on Oriental carpets, or the examination of structures I could have dealt with in much greater detail. However, I felt an overview of the subject and placing this wonderful carpet in its context was more important. As we contemplate the majesty and the strange mythology, we should remember that such carpets were often intended to transport the soul to the afterlife, beauty to meet one's maker. God is beauty, and it has been undoubtedly a great privilege to have had the opportunity to fill my life with so many beautiful works of art. And the Qatar Anatolian animal carpet is truly a magnificent example. I must thank all the individuals who have allowed me to study their carpets and to have the prestige of presenting them here. I'd like to thank all the organizers, and thank you very much indeed. Too quick to read, but it's a bit like the end of a movie where you have a list at the end. It usually flicks up. But thank you all very much indeed.